Since the death of George Floyd, there's been a great deal of focus on police reform. But what about prison reform? How can we improve the conditions of incarcerated people and help them live productive lives when they're released? The Solidarity Building Initiative at McCormick Theological Seminary was created to cultivate justice for and with those who have been marginalized by the criminal punishment system. To find out more, let's welcome Gia Johnson, Solidarity Building Initiative's Director. We also welcome Grace Okerson, Specialty Project Coordinator and Content Curator for this initiative. And we welcome Alonzo Wahid, who has partnered with Solidarity Building Initiative to work directly with incarcerated people. Thanks for joining us today. Gia, I want to start with you. Tell me a little bit how SBI started.
SBI is a program of, or an initiative of McCormick Theological Seminary, and it was inspired by the work of Dr. Jenny McBride. She was doing some work out in Atlanta in a women's prison doing a certificate in theological studies, and she wrote a book called Radical Discipleship. And so after President Crawford at McCormick read that book, he was like, let's do something like that here in Illinois or in Chicago. And so they did a lot of like the groundwork to kind of reach out and figure out what carceral space would be the best place for them to do something like that. And so it turned out that the Cook County Department of Corrections was the place that had the most need, as there's programs in Stateville and Danville and other prisons that are close to us. And so I came on board in 2019 as a graduate student at Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary, and worked with Jenny, invited me to co-teach the second course in the two-part certificate. So we piloted a two-part certificate in 2018, 2019. And so after we were in maximum security division, division 10. And so after we completed that certificate, the men in the course were like, so what's next? Y'all gonna come back? And so at that point, it was like, yes, you know, McCormick was like, they want this, so let's continue to offer this. And so that was the beginning of what would become SBI. And so when I came on board, I wanted to kind of, in tandem with McCormick's kind of initiatives and goals for wanting to be community centered, built a program really around the core of our work, which is their certificate in theological studies. So we have 4 programs that are part of the initiative: seminary and ed, or seminary education in jail. It's reentry support. We do collaborative partnerships, and we do public ed and advocacy.
How are you reaching those in the prisons?
So we're in a jail. So we're at the Cook County Department of Corrections. And so we work with the folks there at the jail. Sheriff Dart has an initiative to offer higher ed at the Cook County Department of Corrections. So there's an educational program tier. And so we work with the folks there, the deputy director for education, for educational programming, to recruit the men that we work with in the carceral classroom.
And Alonzo, I know you are working directly with and partnering with the SBI and working directly with those who are incarcerated. How have you found that this program has been beneficial to those people in prison?
First, I want to say that I was actually amazed that they have provided this opportunity. Being an individual that has been directly impacted, I wish that at the time that these opportunities was provided for myself. In looking at the fact of how the individuals are responding, one of the things that resonates with side of me is that all the time individuals were crying out saying that they needed this type of support, and that they definitely wanted to be involved in the process of them not only being restructured to be able to come back into community, but the fact was that the structure just was not there, even inside the community. So it's like, where was the building blocks to make them to be able to have the mindset to not only want to be better, but who was going to help them and how was they actually going to receive that pathway to success. So this initiative for me is not only very great, but it was very much needed.
And Grace, you started working with the initiative as an intern. Tell us about that, and a little bit more that this is an abolition project.
Yeah, I started as an intern. I was going to Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary out in Evanston, Illinois. And I heard about the work that Gia and the folk at SBI were doing, and I was really excited about that. And as far as it being an abolitionist project, that was something that really kind of curtailed my interest. Going into the work at SBI, I would have really labeled myself as a reformer and wanting to like reform the prison system. And then since being at SBI, I have fully become an abolitionist and really have lived into that identity of what it means to kind of break down these death dealing systems. And so being able to kind of be guided in that process as an intern, I'm going to have a lot of people kind of support me and really just learn about what abolition is, has been really important in that work.
And Gia, maybe you can describe a little bit more about the seminary program, and then how many people actually move on into actually going into seminary after this.
So we are offering theological education. So it's a 2-part certificate in theological studies that we offer there. And so when you're thinking of when we're in pretrial detention, people have not been convicted of a crime, right? And so they're being housed and waiting their trial. And so oftentimes we don't know where they're going to go, if they're going to come back into community or if they're going to go on to further incarceration. And so we see the Solidarity Building Initiative really as a higher ed and jail reentry program. And so what that means for us is that we want to connect folks with those critical resources, especially around education, to help them develop the skill set and the resources and build their resume so that if they should be released, they will be able to add that to their resume. The other thing is that theological education also provides just a lot of the critical skill sets that many employers are looking for, which is around critical thinking, complex problem solving, collaborations and teamwork, emotional intelligence. And so our program is a non-credit bearing course, but it does still have implications for them. One of the things that it also helps for them as well is that if they go before, when they go before the judge, they're able to take with them their certificate to show them like, these are the things that I've been doing while I'm incarcerated. And so those are just a couple of ways. The other thing with the program is that, just because someone does theological education and has an interest doesn't mean that they want to go to seminary, but it doesn't mean that we can't be a partner with them in whatever it is that they want to do. And so we do have this reentry support system. And so one of the ways that we do that is we reconnect with students who are part of the program. And we have what we're calling a care model. And so we pair them with a care coach. And so their care coach is someone that listens, understands what's important to them, and then we do the work of trying to connect them with those resources. So we have a gentleman who was released during COVID, and I'm happy to say that he's enrolled in one of the city colleges right now, and he's going to get some certification because he wants to be a medical technician. I actually talked to him earlier today. And so we have another guy who has been released, and he wants to go on and he wants to do truck driving. And so working with them to see that those things happen. Part of what we also have for SBI alum is what we're calling a continuing education, like stipend or honorarium. So we'll contribute $500 towards them pursuing whatever sort of education that they want to, whether it's college or trades. And so those are some ways that we are continuing to invest and build those relationships from the carceral classroom upon release.
This program really sounds like it not only gives those incarcerated a path forward, but also like helps them define a new self and help them manage their time while incarcerated. Alonzo, can you address that and how important that is? Do any fall through the cracks otherwise?
Yeah, I'll say just from the and Gia had begun to touch on this, and I'm glad the approach is looking at it as not only individuals just picking up a certificate, but the fact that we're looking at reestablishing them back into society. And I think that should happen right from the point where they're placed inside that police car, right? Like, how are we going to reestablish these individuals back into society? And the fact that it is so unique that this is being offered to individuals at the Cook County Detention Center, because again, they're just being detained. Individuals aren't being found. They could be found guilty or not be found guilty, but the fact is that they still was touched by the carceral system. So how are we going to then restore these individuals back, because it's still a presumption of guilt. It's still a presumption of something evil or wrong was being done. And it's oftentimes it's the fact that they're just in a culture, whereas they was trying to survive and or they were being targeted. So this helps them to say, well, you know, regardless of any of that, I was just looking for a pathway to success. And this helps to provide that, saying that without the other mechanisms in place, this is where I ended up. But now here is a pathway that I could show that, you know what, I did want something better in my life. I was trying to be better, and I just needed something, a support system to help to prop me up. And SBI does that. And then also looking at, again, how Gia mentioned, that is not just once they're actually released, but upon that, right, the support systems are still in place to make sure that ongoing, once they're out of the detention center, right, that they're able to still receive support. Because a lot of times it's like, well, how was you doing? And this is the misconception, that individuals are doing better off while they're incarcerated because they have the structure there, right? But then the structure falls away when they come home. And the issue with that is that's due to our systems. That's due to the structures that's involved in the communities that these individuals live in, where they're out there and there is no true means for survival except having to resort to some type of criminal behavior, or they don't have to be doing anything criminal, right? But they're still targeted just because the way they look, the way that they walk, the way that they talk, that they're looked as though they're doing something that's improper. But through SBI, I believe that we're showing that these individuals do want better in their lives, because they have to be an intricate part of this. They are signing up for this. Individuals aren't tying them, saying that you have to do this, right, to receive, whether it's probation, parole, or whatever. They're signing up themselves, saying this is something that I want to do. And through this, as Gia also mentioned, look at the skill sets that's now able to be developed, but it's already inside of them. And this helps just to pull that out. And with that, I'm saying that if this was being able to be offered widespread throughout the Cook County Detention Center, I believe that it would be very, very beneficial, because individuals are just looking for some help. They're looking for a way out, and they're looking for a pathway to success.
It gives them so much hope, maybe that hope that they didn't have. And like you said, the programming must be really good, that it's making a difference. It's making them want to change their lives. So what is it in the programming that is doing that? And like you said, it's not just to check off a box and get.
That is, it adds to the hope, because one, believe me, all hope is lost. It's like, well, and we see it all the time when individuals are like, you know what, this is just how it goes, right? So I should just plea out this case. Whereas this not only provides hope, but it provides support. It provides a system. It provides a place where their voices are heard, where they're acknowledged, they're validated, they find self-worth with them in themselves. Where, and this is the most important part to me, where they begin to matter again.
And Grace, tell us what you think. You actually are now working with the initiative, going from intern to initiative. So what made you want to continue on with this, and what kind of difference are you seeing with this program?
A lot of my work is kind of on the outside of the jail and really working with kind of our public facing programs. And so a lot of what I have done is really helping around educating the public around what incarceration is, what abolition is, and like those sorts of things. And I think kind of before, when I was talking about when I came in, I was a reformer and have changed to an abolitionist. And I think that has been through learning. And so part of the reason that I wanted to stay on after being an intern was to kind of pour that back into the community. So how can we begin to educate those that have just a lot of misconceptions around what really goes on in incarceration, a lot of misconceptions around what abolition is. I think that abolition has been, that the word abolition has been in the media so much, and sometimes it can seem like a scary word. People don't know what it means. And so I think that a lot of educating people around that is something that is really important. I think that SBI does well. And so that is probably one of the main reasons that I saw myself wanting to continue on with SBI post my internship.
Grace, what do you mean by an abolition project? What does abolition really mean?
I think at the core of abolition really is creating. A lot of people think that abolition is just this thing of tearing down and getting rid of old systems, but really it's about creating life-giving opportunities. And so things like resources for communities are life-giving. There are so many different avenues that we can take to kind of reduce crime than putting people behind bars. Abolition is really about taking punishment and saying that that's not the only way, but there are consequences, there's accountability, but there doesn't need to be this sort of punishment that incarceration and the prison industrial complex kind of leans on. And so when you're thinking about creating, it's really thinking about what are the things that are going to kind of lead to individual flourishing for individuals, but as well as communities. At the core of abolition is really being in community with others and being in sort of radical community. It's about mutual aid, it's about interdependence. And so when we think about SBI being an abolitionist project, we think about how we can kind of journey along with those that are incarcerated post-incarceration, as well as journey with their families, journey with the community. Kind of when I was talking about the public facing programming, that is SBI journeying with the community, trying to learn together. As an abolitionist, I don't think that I know everything that there is to know about abolition. I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly making mistakes and constantly trying to fix those mistakes. And so when we think about abolition, it's just always trying to be better within this place that we call home.
And Gia, we all know we've heard prison reform projects in the news, but I'm sure you face a lot of challenges. Can you talk about those and how you're trying to expand this program?
So first, I just want to say, Grace, I echo you on the learning journey of being an abolitionist. We do not have it all figured out. So the challenges, I would say, that's a really great question. So I think for us, I don't know if it's a challenge at this point as much as like we are in a place where we are growing and expanding. I think that it's a really beautiful thing. We have congregations who are reaching out to us, asking us to come and provide support for them to help their congregations become places for restorative reentry, where they can welcome in folks who have the experience of incarceration. Alonzo and another gentleman went and did a reentry healing circle with some folks over at the Colby House. And so, you know, we have interests and desires to want to expand our programming to the women's division at the Cook County Department of Corrections. And so I would say that one of the biggest needs for us at this point is financial support. This is an initiative that McCormick has fully backed and fully supported. And so we are at a place now where outside funding and outside support will help us be able to continue to move our work forward.
Great. And Alonzo, you touched on this, but I think just educating to the public, I think there's a lot of stigmatism around someone that's been incarcerated. I actually was looking on a Facebook group today, and some woman, she posted, my husband, who has a record, is looking for a job and can't find one because he keeps getting denied because he has that criminal record. So it's a lot about raising awareness, and is this program helping with that?
Yes, I think that it's not only helping, that it's also in the forefront. And the reason why I say that is most programs look at it from a reactionary concept or reactionary method, whereas this happened, so now this is how we're going to react to it. And the reason why, again, I really enjoy this and being a part of it is more proactive, right? And it goes back to what Grace had touched on with abolition. It's also changing the mindset around abolition, because it's not just about destroying, but if we just really scratch the surface of that, individuals don't want this carceral state to be destroyed, because what it's saying is that on the forefront, it looks as though it's saying, well, individuals did wrong or individuals are evil, right? And then this is the price that they had to pay for that. But what we're saying is that that system did not work, right? And we have to abolish that, which means to not only tear that down, and this is what I mean by being proactive, we're also establishing something, right? We're being proactive in giving an alternative solution, right? Because what you're doing is you're taking away not only an individual's hope, but you're interrelating that to their worth and their value, saying that, you know what, because of this arrest, I'm always a criminal. No, I'm not what I did, right? And then you need to understand why I did what I've done, right? And then you also need to be able to couple that with why was this law created to target me and my demographic? And then we see this playing out through prohibition. We see it playing out through the gambling with the lottery. We see it playing out also now in the cannabis legislation. Like on one end, you can criminalize and demonize a person, right? And have them locked away. But then years later, you can come back and individuals can commit that same act, right? And then they're touted as geniuses. And there's an issue with that because that stigma for the individuals that got arrested, it still stands there, right? Whether it's the criminal background or whether it's just the fact that individuals feel and they know that you've been arrested. Case in point, where you could be arrested, have handcuffs put on you, put in a police car, and now you have that stigma that you've been arrested, not convicted, but you went to the county. So now something is wrong because now there's a record of that. And then they could say, well, you know what? You have 3, 4, 5 different arrests, even though none of them was convicted. And nobody did the research to find out that you was being arrested just because you was walking down the street. And at that time, it was very popular to lock up individuals just for walking down the street. So these are the things that I'm saying that this program, this initiatives, it puts value and worth back for an individual that's saying, you know what, I'm more than just this arrest record. And now I have something that I can attach myself to saying, yes, this comes from the seminary, but then they gave me the opportunity to show, right? And that I can complete this. I can be disciplined. I do have cognitive thinking abilities, whereas my worth is now exceeding, because one of the other parts that I love about this is that one of the ways that we bring worth to them is understanding and not just listening, right? But giving their voice authority, saying, this is what you all said. So now this is how we're going to move. Just saying, how do you all want to go about respecting one another? How do you all want to go about talking to one another? What are the issues that you think we should be addressing here, right? And then that adds not only self-worth to them, but then what it also adds is the fact that if I could do this here, I know that I could do this out in the streets. And the thing is, I've always been wanting to do it. And now you all afforded me the opportunity to show that I'm so much more than what the culture of or our world has perceived me to be. And that's what I would want to be able to get out that SBI is doing, because regardless of all of the other reform work that's out there, not saying that it's not needed, this is one of the first initiatives that I saw that is actually touting the individuals that's a part of the program as the experts and putting them in the forefront of being a part of their own success.
And how does the program reach those who are incarcerated? Do they have to sign up? Are they are people, individuals, specified by the Cook County Jail? Is it available to everyone?
We work with the educational program tiers at the Cook County Department of Corrections. And so we basically provide them with a proposal of whatever courses or workshops we want to offer. And then they go internally and they do the recruiting for folks who are already on the educational program tiers. We've served 66 folks. And we've taught 6 courses. And we had 12 students who have gone through and completed the 2-part certificate program. The other thing that I wanted to just say, in addition to all of the wonderful things that Alonzo just said, is that there's some that with higher ed in prison, it has shown that it is one of the most effective pathways to reduce reincarceration. And so folks who, whether it's credit-bearing courses or non-credit-bearing courses, you increase the odds of employment by 13%. You reduce the odds of reoffending by 43%. And for every dollar that's invested in higher ed and prison programs, we save $4 to $5. And I want to be clear here that we are investing in people. And we are investing in people who have actually experienced a social injustice long before they found themselves incarcerated. And so we have students in our program who will tell us that they legit had to go to incarceration to get a quality education. They had a better education in the 4 years that they were in pretrial detention than they did while they were in high school. That is an injustice. And so when Grace was talking about crime and poverty, what we do know is that poverty produces crime. And oftentimes, and Alonzo can speak to this, and oftentimes they're survival crimes. People are trying to live, they're trying to eat, they're trying to do all the same things that folks in different classes want to do for themselves. They just oftentimes live in communities that lack those resources. And those are the folks that we are working with at the Cook County Department of Corrections. And so I want to say this last thing is that I think one of the things that kind of comes up in our conversation is like community. Bell Hooks has this quote that says that to heal our wounded communities, we must return to a love ethic, one that is exemplified by the combined forces of care, respect, responsibility, and knowledge. And so when we do the work at the Cook County Department of Corrections, and everything that Alonzo was talking about is called building deep community. And our deep community is reflective of that love ethic that Bell Hooks talks about. And so our students see that we see them and that we care about them and their future. We aren't here to reform them or transform them. We are here to provide them with the resources that they didn't get in their neighborhood and in their community. And they are transforming themselves in community with us. And we too are being changed.
I can see that wholeheartedly. And I think it's about, like you said, equity and transformation and giving people that opportunity that they may have not had before.
Is there a story that you want to share from the Healing and Justice Conversation series? I have Maggio's paper right here, but I don't know if you want to share something.
One of the things that I would say as a segue to sharing that, right? Because I think that that's the best way to do it, is that just touching on the lack of education, right? Coupling that with having to figure out a way to survive and then being arrested for that, right? Like we can't get away from the fact that individuals have been actually choked out just because they were selling cigarettes, a loose bottle, loose cigarettes or a bottle of water on the side of a corner. And then from that, right, they get choked out and could possibly end up losing their lives. Like we have individuals being criminalized for just doing the basic things or just trying to survive. And why this becomes appalling is that an individual is not asked where they got the money from to buy Pampers, to pay for a cable bill, to pay for a light bill or a gas bill, right? And that is very, very important, because to work at a company that produces Pampers or to produce electricity or gas, right? They then ask you, what's your background? But you're not asking me my background when I'm providing money to help these companies to prosper. But when it comes that I need a job from you all, you're then checking my background. And why that's appalling is, well, how do I survive? But you all can benefit off of me, all right? Whereas I can come and I could buy product and I get product from you and you're not questioning where I got the money from then. But when I need to come and I'm saying that I will work for your company so that I will be able to then provide for my family, the door is shut in my face and I'm left to have to figure out a way on how I'm going to do that. All right, now you couple that with me having a limited education that I should have been provided for, whether it was through public schooling or whatever. And we have individuals graduating from going straight into high school, but they're reading at a third or fourth grade level. Like, and nobody is holding nobody accountable for this. And it's saying, well, you know, that's what happens in communities of poverty. But then after, just again, having those two things coupled together, saying that I still have to figure out a way to survive because I'm still going to need the Pampers. I'm still going to need the electricity. I'm still going to need the gas, right? I'm then criminalized for that. So this SBI helps to show that just providing individuals with just a basic chance, right? And then coupling that with the fact that, you know what, you do have worth, it pushes them at least past the edge that, you know what, I at least is figuring out that one, I definitely don't want to go back there, but now I have some tools, right? That I could say that through these tools, these basic tools here that I'm given, I could not only be a better person, but I can figure out another way to survive in a society that has been designed to work against.
This program is changing lives. Gia, you said you had an example.
We had a healing and justice conversation series, and Alonzo was one of our co-facilitators. We partnered up with the Harvard Radcliffe Institute. And so this student on his own volition was like, I want to write my testimony when I turn in my final project, in terms of like how this program has impacted me. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's quite long, but it's really powerful. You can actually jump on sbimccormick.org and go to our news page, and you can find a series called Community Healers, Voices Behind Students Behind Bars. And so that's where we post all of their work, and this is on there. But he introduces this by stating that he's been in and out of jail for about 10 years, and mostly throughout California and a couple of other states, and then he's landed here in Chicago. And so he said, so after he says that, he says, I bring this up because in all of this incarcerated time, I've never been in a program like this 4-day course you all provided. I never received the type of wisdom, kindness, and understanding before. You all provided a safe, loving, non-judgmental environment where people can tell their truth and heal. This course should be expanded to at least 16 weeks, twice a week program throughout every jail in America. And so then he just goes on to talk about like, I will rally with you. I will be a comrade to make sure that this happened. And so we know that what we're doing is doing something because our students tell us, and they remain the center of our work, not McCormick, not SBI, but our students and the people that we work closely with. They remain the center of our work.
They become your advocates, those who have gone through this program. That's great. Grace, did you want anything else to add? Did you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, I think the only thing that I wanted to say was that one of my favorite things about SBI is that everything's done in community. So even thinking about Alonzo being here from EAT and all the different community partners that we have, SBI is not on an island to itself. Everything that we do is with intentional community and making sure that different organizations in Chicago can come together to do the work that needs to be done.
Wonderful. Thank you all for sharing more about this initiative. And like I said, I think you're changing lives. It's great.
Thank you. And I just want to say, if folks are interested in learning more about our work and even, being an ally, a comrade with us, you're welcome to jump on our website, sbimccormick.org. We do have a place where it's called Action Now, and you can find ways where you can get involved, whether it be through volunteer or through supporting us financially.
Well, thank you, Gia, Grace, and Alonzo for joining us and sharing more about the initiative. I'm Anne Marie Gerhardt for Different Drummers and the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.